This one, the SAS says the way science is conducted and regulated can be changed. All right, I guess it can be changed. But, okay, so we have a point of contrast here when we say but. We need to determine whether the changes are warranted, taking into account their price. Okay, so apparently we need to determine whether the changes, and what kinds of changes? Would you say?
So the animals.
I think we're just talking about the way science is conducted,
Okay.
right? Like we the way science is conducted and regulated can be changed, but we need to determine whether these changes are warranted. Um, and what do we need to consider whenever we're determining if they're warranted or not?
The use of animals.
I think, well, first their price, right?
Oh, their price. Yeah.
Okay, so then we transition and we say the use of animals in research could end immediately, but only at the cost of abandoning many kinds of research and making others very expensive. What part of the argument is this?
I would say facts. So premise.
Yeah, yeah, it's telling us like, hey, like this could happen, but only if this happened. And then it continues on and says the use of recombinant DNA could be drastically curdled. Many other restrictions could be imposed, complete with a system of fraud police. But such massive interventions would be costly and would change the character of science. Um, what massive interventions are we talking about?
Um, so like not using animals in research.
Excellent. So what would be the main conclusion here?
I would say what I thought was, but we need to determine whether the changes are warranted, taking into account their price.
Wonderful. And so what answer choice did you go with though?
So I went with A, but I was in between A, C, and D. I was about to choose D,
Okay.
but I
So,
felt like that really didn't like match my conclusion.
right. So our conclusion is, but we need to determine whether the changes in the way we conduct science or the way that science is conducted and regulated are warranted considering their price. And D says the imposition of reconstructions on the cost of science would be very costly. You're right. One, it's not our conclusion or what we're referring to. And two, just because they're really costly doesn't mean that we shouldn't do them, right? We're just saying like, hey, we need to consider this at least before we do it. All right, so then when we look at A, it says we should not make changes that will alter the character of science. Do we actually say that we should not alter the character of science?
Mm-mm.
No, so it's not A either. So go ahead and read B, C, and E out, like read one out loud and tell me what you think of that answer.
If we regulate science more closely, will it change the character of science? The regulation of science and the conducting of science can be changed.
Right. So if we regulate science more closely, we will change the character of science. Is that our conclusion?
No.
No, because we're just saying essentially our only conclusion is we need to determine whether the changes are worth it based on the price it would cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, it could change the character of science, but once again, we're trying to determine like, is it worth changing the character of science?
So the regulation of science and the conducting of science can be changed. It's not the conclusion either,
Yes, why not?
because it's not talking about like conducting or that it can be changed.
Fabulous.
reading E, we need to be aware of the impact of change in sign before changes are made. So that's definitely the conclusion.
Yes.
And that is so true as well.
Yes. Excellent. So one of the best strategies for answering questions is trusting that even if something sounds good, if it's not what we're talking about or what we were said, we can't
Mhm.
don't offer answer choices grace. Just cross them off. You're like, okay, that literally cannot be it because it's not said.
Okay.
All right.